Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. I hope everybody enjoyed their 4th of July weekend, which is, I guess, still technically going on because most people have today off, even though the 4th was yesterday. And oh, by the way, we are presented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure I give our sponsor a shout out. That's always important. And Sap, just as we predicted at the very beginning of the season, it's Bucks Suns in the finals. We knew it from day one.
Yeah, we had that one nailed, didn't we? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
40 years late because throughout high school, those were my two favorite teams, the Bucks and Suns. And I thought in 1981, my senior year in high school, that was going to be the finals because the Suns had the best record in the West and the Bucks were right behind the Celtics and the Sixers. And well, it didn't happen, but here 40 years later, it finally happened. Yeah, it's kind of a pleasant surprise, though, because you've got these new players that you're seeing, like Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, are really young stars that are really charismatic and enjoy watching them. And Milwaukee did a great job after losing Giannis in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals to win Games 5 and 6 without their best player. And through it all, I think a lot of the country will be rooting for Chris Paul in his 16th year. This is his first finals appearance. So certainly not the teams we thought, even maybe going into the postseason. I thought Milwaukee, we both were high in Milwaukee, although, we still kind of looked at Brooklyn as a team that was going to be tough to beat, but then they suffered injuries. And then I thought that Milwaukee could get to this point, but we both thought Phoenix would lose in the first round to the Lakers. And I still think if LeBron was closer to 100% and Anthony Davis didn't get hurt in that series, that the Lakers would have won that series. I think if Kawhi wasn't hurt, the Clippers would have beaten the Suns in the Western Conference Finals.
Sure.
I won't go as far as saying that Phoenix would have lost to Denver in the second round if Jamal Murray's there, but it would have been closer than a 4-game sweep. So, yeah, everything broke right for Phoenix, but give them credit. They took advantage of it, and Milwaukee give them credit because they lost Giannis in Game 4, and everyone thought that Atlanta was going to win that series, and then the Bucks came up with two great performances in Games 5 and 6. So we've got two organizations, Jet, that are not familiar with being in the finals. The Bucks haven't been there since 1974, and I remember that series. They lost to the Celtics in 7 games, and Phoenix hasn't been back to the finals since 1993 when they lost to Michael Jordan and the Bulls. The only other time Phoenix was in the finals, they lost to the Celtics in 76. So the two Celtics titles in the 70s came at the expense of the Bucks in 74 and the Suns in 76. So
Yeah, they can commiserate together about
yes,
those losses.
yeah, Dave Cowens and can look and say, hey, I beat both organizations in the 70s, but obviously the teams are a lot different 45 plus years later. I think it's gonna be a fun series.
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously the biggest factor, whether it's going to be a really fun competitive series, is Giannis's health. Everybody's still sort of waiting to see what his status is. They're staying day to day. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? I mean, that's obviously Phoenix is the favorite right now because people are just assuming Giannis is nowhere close to 100%, which is
Right.
probably true. But I think, if he's at 80, 85%, I think that I think the Bucks have a damn good chance in this series. Now, obviously, if he doesn't play at all, I don't think they have a chance in hell. So, I mean, that's going to be the determining factor. And like you said, Sab, it's an interesting finals, not just because both these teams haven't been here before, and there's young stars on Phoenix, and Giannis is an established star but hasn't been here before, and Chris Paul obviously is playing for a massive legacy, enhancer, and winning his first title. It's his first finals appearance, but just like it opened up, for Phoenix which I think it's opened up. I said this in the last time we talked. Opened up for Phoenix in a historic way. I've never seen it open up so well for a team. But we could also be talking about the Nets being here right now, if not for Kevin Durant having, a bigger than average foot. And if his foot's behind the 3-point line, then it's most likely Brooklyn here right now, and they're the favorites. So it's been it's been a really interesting playoffs, a very, very unpredictable playoffs. And that's why I think it's great that the finals sort of represents that too, is that, I joked right at the top, we had this since day one. No one had this since day one. No one picked the Bucks or the Suns, no experts to be here at the beginning of the year. And yet here, both of those teams are.
Certainly Phoenix, right? They've gone 10 straight years without even being in the postseason. And I thought they'd make the playoffs this year because we both think that Chris Paul is an all-time great point guard. And I think if he wins this title, he cements himself as one of the top 5 point guards in the history of basketball, behind Magic Johnson, Oscar Robertson, Steph Curry, and Isaiah Thomas. I think he would neatly fit in at number 5. And again, it's tough to rank point guards and shooting guards because sometimes those lines are blurred. Like Allen Iverson, is he a point guard? Is he a shooting guard? What the hell is Jerry West? Steph Curry isn't a true point guard because he's more of a marksman. I mean, it's tough to really pick those spots, but we all agree that Chris Paul is definitely a point guard in the Isaiah Thomas mold. So he's an all-time great. So I thought that he would help Phoenix get into the playoffs. I didn't think they'd be the number 2 seed, and I didn't think they'd beat the Lakers in the first round. I felt confident against Denver and the Clippers, especially when they faced the Clippers, because the Clippers didn't have Kawhi Leonard for that series. So, but give all these teams credit, though, for hanging in there with injuries, because even Phoenix, they get to the Western Conference Finals, and Chris Paul misses the first 2 games because of COVID, and yet Phoenix wins the first 2 games on their home court, and they're able to win that series in 6 games.
Devin Booker breaks his nose. I mean, it's
exactly.
Not like they're unscathed.
No, they persevered. Give the Clippers credit. It was 2-2 when Kawhi Leonard got hurt. They won the final 2 games to beat Utah, the number 1 seed, to get to the Western Conference Finals. And look, a bounce here or there, a free throw made here or there by Paul George, and maybe we're talking about the Clippers in the finals. There's no team this year, unless Brooklyn and the Lakers were completely healthy and clicking on all cylinders, that we're going to just breeze through this thing, right? I mean, you thought that the Nets could do it and lose maybe 3 or 4 games throughout the whole postseason. The Lakers, if they had been healthy, I think would have gotten to the finals pretty handily and then would have had to face Brooklyn. Well, both of those teams had too much to overcome in terms of injuries, and these other teams took advantage of it. So give them credit. And look at Milwaukee winning games 5 and 6 in the Eastern Conference Finals without Giannis. And now it is kind of incredible. Do you think that them getting to the finals impacts Giannis's legacy? It's like, this guy's a 2-time MVP. He's a great player, yet they didn't miss a beat without him in games 5 and 6. In fact, their offense looked smoother without him in those 2 games.
You're doing the Skip Bayless thing right now.
I know.
You're saying, maybe the Bucks are better without Giannis. They're not. That's just patently untrue. I think it was maybe either Barkley or Shaq who said that. I think I might be misattributing this, saying it was the best thing that could happen to the Bucks because it gave guys like Middleton and Holiday a lot more confidence in themselves and saying, hey, we can do this. And so if and hopefully when Giannis comes back, I think it could be to the Bucks' advantage because they know they can win games without Giannis being excellent down the stretch or without. I mean, he's still, even if he's at 80%, I would still expect him to put up 25 and 12. I mean, that's just he's physically dominant. But I think it gave Middleton and Holiday and Lopez, who played like Shaq in 2001.
Yeah.
A lot of confidence, and I think that's really helpful for the Bucks. Should Giannis be able to play now? I mean, it's great if you have confidence and you're in the finals, but if your best player is not playing, you're playing against a really good team like Phoenix. You could have all the confidence in the world, you could still potentially get waxed. But I think if they are at full strength roster wise, then I do think those 2 games without Giannis could really help Phoenix know how to play sort of within themselves a little bit better.
Yeah, because they certainly came alive in games 5 and 6. And Jet, we in the history of basketball, I went back, 30 years ago because I'm really old, and you're not anywhere as old as I am. But you were alive in 1991. You were just 2 years old at that point.
Correct.
So Magic Johnson announced that he was HIV positive in November of 1991. He retired, and the next night the Lakers lost to Phoenix. They got blown out in Phoenix. Obviously, they were still in shock over Magic announcing, more importantly, that he was ill, but also that he was retiring. Right. He did come back and play on the Olympic team and then made another comeback in 1996. But essentially his career was over at that point. After that loss in Phoenix, the Lakers won 9 straight games. It's like they went on this long winning streak without Magic Johnson. So for a short period of time, teams can kind of get through it without their best player. It shouldn't be a practice that you want to have long term, but in a short term, you can kind of find a way to get through it. Like we said, Phoenix was able to get up 2-0 against the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals without Chris Paul. I think the Clippers did a nice job in getting to Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals without Kawhi Leonard. We see now what Milwaukee has done. Heck, even Atlanta won a game without Trae Young. So it can be done. Just you don't want to have it become normalized that it's going to take a long period of time for that to happen. But in a short period, you can get by. But I agree 100% because now Middleton and Drew Holiday are playing with a ton of confidence, as is Bobby Portis, who for some reason didn't play in the series against Brooklyn. I'm still not
that
sure
made no sense.
why.
That made no sense. I believe Bill Simmons calls this the Ewing theory, is in reference to Patrick Ewing, that the Knicks were in fact better for stretches when Ewing didn't play.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, to reach their peak in potential, Patrick Ewing had to play, but there were stretches that when they didn't have Patrick Ewing that the team looked better because this can happen when you have a star player. You want to run everything through the star player, ideally.
Mm-hmm.
So the role players become even more limited, and the bench players become almost irrelevant because everything is running through the one guy. And so when that one guy is out and these other guys are forced to step up, you have to play more of a team game, sort of as basketball was originally envisioned. Because I don't think when Dr. James Naismith invented the sport, he was like, okay, there's going to be one guy on the team that we're going to just, stand next to the peach basket and funnel everything through. I think he's just like, oh yeah, it'll be a great team game where everybody's involved equally. Now, obviously that never happened, but not having your star player for stretches allows for more, I guess, not necessarily more chemistry, but more ability to play a freer sort of game. It's less restrictive. But again, the NBA history has shown us you can't win consistently without a star player.
No,
it just doesn't happen.
No. I mean, look at the Bulls, right? So they win 3 straight. 1993, Michael Jordan retires before the season. They won 55 games the year he wasn't there. The full year he wasn't there. The year before they won 57 games, beat Phoenix in the finals, the last time the Suns were in the finals. He retired in September or October of 93. And without Michael Jordan, they won 55 games, went to the second round of the playoffs, lost a tough series to the Knicks in 6 games. One of the games felt like it was stolen from Chicago by Hugh Evans. And the Knicks went on and lost to Houston in the NBA Finals. But even without Michael Jordan, the Bulls remained extremely competitive. They had Scottie Pippen. The one player who, when he's missing, the team completely falls apart, we know, is LeBron James. I mean, you see it Cleveland the first time he left, Miami when he left Miami, Cleveland when he left the second time. When he's not on the court with the Lakers, they're a completely different team. He's the ultimate, force multiplier. I mean, I think Chris Paul's a force multiplier. I don't know if Giannis is a force multiplier. He's a great player, but I don't know if he's a force multiplier. But yeah, you see that you can kind of get through that. But to think that they can win this series without Giannis playing, I think is foolish because the Suns are that good and they're on a roll right now that they're extremely confident.
Right. And I mean, call a spade, Sap. They beat the Hawks with a hobbled Trae Young in 2 games. I mean, that's,
exactly.
It's not like, granted, listen, the Hawks were playing fantastic, but their best player was hurt and they're still, not expected to be there. It's not like it was a Herculean accomplishment to beat the Hawks in those 2 games.
No, they should have. Even without Giannis, they're still a better team than the Hawks. I mean, you could say Trae Young is maybe the best player left now in that series, but then Middleton, Drew Holiday are better than the second best player in Atlanta. And you can kind of run this exercise and still determine that Milwaukee's a better team than Atlanta. So yeah, I mean, as we record the podcast, we're still 24 hours away from game 1, a little more than 24 hours away from game 1. So the status of Giannis is still up in the air. It's a game time decision. I'm thinking if Milwaukee can get through the first 2 games in Phoenix, somehow get a split without Giannis, maybe you get him closer to being healthy for game 3 this weekend in Milwaukee. That will give him more like a 10-day rest period between his last appearance against Atlanta and his first appearance against Phoenix. I think to try to get him out there Tuesday or Thursday night is going to be very, very difficult. Maybe you can steal a win there against the Phoenix Suns. Again, as good as the Suns are, they're not the Lakers of last year. They're not the Golden State Warriors of the 5-year run that the Warriors were dominant. They're just not that good. They're outstanding. It's a great story. And I think they're going to win this series, but neither of these teams is that potent that the other one can't beat them. I mean, this series feels like a toss-up for the most part, other than Phoenix is healthier and has home court advantage.
Yeah, for one, Sap, I mean, combined, these 2 teams have one player with finals experience. That's Jay Crowder last year. So just one guy who's actually been here before. And
Yep.
two, unfortunately, we just don't know anything about the status of Giannis because they've been so tight-lipped. We don't know how bad the injury is.
Right.
They're saying knee strain. So, trying to guess if his availability is almost like spitting in the wind right now.
Yep.
It's unpredictable. He could be good to go for game one. He could miss the entire series. They've just been very New England Patriots-esque with the injury, saying, he's got a hurt knee. Well, that could mean a million different things. So it's almost impossible to predict one way or another what his impact on this series will be because we don't know if or when he will be in the series and what he will look like. So, that definitely makes it hard, but certainly if he doesn't play and if he's under, 50%, then I'd say Phoenix shouldn't have too much trouble with Milwaukee. I still think Milwaukee is good, but I don't think they can beat Phoenix. If Giannis plays, I think that's a different story. So, I mean, it's almost a cop out for me, Seth, but I will take Milwaukee with the caveat that Giannis has to play, at least get in there for game 3. If he
Yeah.
doesn't, then I mean, I'll take Phoenix. It's not really, it's kind of a cheating answer, but I like Milwaukee better if Giannis plays. If he doesn't, I obviously like Phoenix better.
I mean, the guy's won the MVP twice. There's not a lot of players in the history of the league that can say that. And, you feel bad that here he is in the finals and he's going to be less than 100%. And this is a player that relies heavily on his athletic ability. So a strained knee is an issue. I mean, we saw James Harden kind of work through the hamstring issue because he doesn't necessarily play an athletic game.
No.
Kevin Durant could probably have a strained knee and still put up 35 points as long as he could walk down the court. It's not going to really impact his jumper or his case that Durant doesn't even have to take a jumper when you're 7 feet tall. But Giannis relies a lot on athleticism, rim protection, his ability to rebound, his ability to attack the rim. I mean, that he's going to need to be explosive. So I think the cautious approach would be hold him up for the first 2 games, see how he's progressing, see how he is in game 3, and then go from there. And if you could steal one game in Phoenix, which I think you can, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's out of the question.
No, like you said, they're not the Warriors from a couple years ago. They're not.
No.
Even if Milwaukee's not at full strength, they can certainly take a game from them.
Oh, of course. And I mean, Chris Paul, he's dealing with some injuries. I know his right wrist, he's got a strain there. The shoulder could pop at any moment.
The back must be bad from Patrick Beverley shoving him.
Right, exactly. Patrick Beverley going all hockey over there. I mean, Devin Booker's still dealing with a broken nose. So, I mean, they're all banged up at this point. It's been a very long season because the schedule is so condensed and it's been more of a, who can survive this thing. But I'm looking forward to it because, again, we got 2 franchises between them and won 1 title. That was Milwaukee back in 1971. I was 8 years old when they did that. I do remember that, though. It was the then Lou Alcindor and Oscar Robertson sweeping the Washington Bullets led by Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld. And I clearly remember the 74 finals because it was Celtics-Bucks. That was a weird series, Jet, because the Bucks had home court advantage and the road team won 5 of the 7 games. It was just the weirdest series. It was 2-2. The Celtics won game 5 in Milwaukee. So when they came back for game 6, it was like, okay, no problem. The Celtics are going to wrap it up on their home court. And then Kareem or Lou Alcindor hit a jump hook with about a second left in double overtime to give the Bucks the game 6 win. And then it went back to Milwaukee for game 7. And everybody was like, well, Milwaukee's going to win there at home. They've got, Lou Alcindor. And the Celtics made an interesting choice. They had Dave Cowens front Lou Alcindor, and then they'd have somebody trailing behind so that he could really never get the ball. And that took them out of their, comfort zone. And the Celtics won pretty handily in game 7. Actually, Paul Westphal was a Celtic back then and had a big game in game 7. So that was a very memorable series because at the same time, the Bruins were playing the Flyers in the Stanley Cup final. Everyone thought the Bucks were going to beat the Celtics, but that the Bruins would beat the Flyers, and it ended up being the other way around.
You can't count the Celtics out.
Not back then when they
not back then.
had lost
now, yeah.
1 finals. They'd only lost 1 finals in their entire history.
That's
insane. In fact, until Magic and Kareem won in '85, they had lost 1 finals in their history. I mean, and at that point they had 15. They were 15-1 at one point in the finals. That's crazy.
So basically the 1 was a fluke, more or less.
Yeah,
the
I
one
mean,
loss.
because Bill Russell was hurt. I think he
Yeah.
had a bad ankle injury in Game 6 or 7 of that finals,
It's
and
against the Hawks, right? The St.
it was
Louis
against the
Hawks.
St. Louis Hawks. Yeah, and
Right.
so he was 11-1. They won twice with Havlicek and Cowens, and they won the first two times with Bird, and then finally in '85, and then of course the Memorial Day Massacre, they won by 34 in Game 1. It was like, okay, the Celtics are going to just win another finals against the Lakers, but Kareem and Magic, got to work and won that series in 6 games. But yeah, imagine that they were 15-1 in finals in their first
Yes.
16. They never
That's
lost. It was
bonkers.
like, oh, the Celtics are in the finals. They're going to win.
Yeah. So it is great to see the fresh blood, Sap, in the
Mm-hmm.
finals. I mean, as we talked about before, and I think it's great for both the fan bases and for the league to
Yep.
have more parity, to diversify. Let's talk about finals MVP. And obviously, we know who the candidates are. It's always the star players. Is it a big deal for Chris Paul to have to add a finals MVP on top of potentially winning a championship, or is just winning a championship good enough?
That's good enough for him. And I'll go back to a player who at least got to the finals several times before winning it finally, and that was Julius Erving. He made the finals in 77, 80, and 82, lost to Portland in 77, lost to the Lakers in 80 and 82, all three of those series in 6 games. And Dr. J was great in all three of those finals. Finally, in 1983, he had Moses Malone by his side, and the Sixers swept the LA Lakers to win the 83 championship. Moses Malone was the finals MVP, as he should have been. He was just so dominant. I don't think Dr. J was upset that he didn't win the finals MVP, finally got his NBA championship. I think Chris Paul would be quite happy as long as he wins this series. If the MVP goes to Devin Booker or DeAndre Ayton, I mean, those are the two other candidates that you would think. If you generally don't see, secondary players win an MVP, I mean, the closest really is Andre Iguodala won the finals MVP in
Yeah, that was a weird one.
2016. That was just weird. You could have literally given it to LeBron in that series. If that had gone 7 games,
I
LeBron
know,
probably would have
Seth.
still won it. I just want to bring him into this conversation because he's being forgotten about. It's the finals. He should be there. But yeah, like Chauncey Billups, when he won the finals MVP, was the best player on the Pistons.
Yeah.
That wasn't really a surprise, right? I mean, I think when Kawhi won in 2014, again, it was almost, that was totally a team effort. Kawhi only averaged 17 a game in that series, but the Spurs won in 5, so you had to give it to someone, and they probably got tired of giving it to Duncan because man, what a choice that is, Duncan or Kawhi to give the MVP speech.
Right. Yeah, really
Talk about
exciting
putting
stuff.
us all to sleep. I think that the sentiment would be Chris Paul, and I'm sure Devin Booker would probably give his MVP trophy to Chris Paul because it isn't it hilarious to just watch those two guys interact. I mean, Devin Booker follows him like a puppy dog.
Yeah,
Like
DeAndre Ayton's the same way too. I
they
mean, really.
both. Yeah, it's incredible. It's so cool to see these two young guys who are starting to build their brand. They absolutely adore Chris Paul. They follow him around like two little puppies. And I don't know if this is going to last for several more years. They may get tired of Chris Paul after a while, but you know what? It's working unless they're just the two right guys to deal with Chris Paul. Maybe Devin Booker's so confident in himself that he's fine with that, and that DeAndre Ayton has such a great temperament that he's fine with it too. But that's the thing I noticed when they won the Western Conference Finals, and all you saw was Devin Booker like next to Chris Paul, just trying to get everything from him. So I think if Phoenix wins, you'd like to see Chris Paul win it, but I don't think it'll really change his legacy at all. As long as he gets that title, that's going to just move him up in those rankings. I think he's the 5th greatest point guard of all time, win or lose in this, but I think if he wins, that he's cemented there.
Well, Sap, do you think that finals MVP is ever particularly impactful in terms of defining a player's legacy?
Well, Chauncey Billups isn't in the Hall of Fame. And I think he should be because his career is so similar to Joe Dumars' career. Joe Dumars has a finals MVP as well. And I think that could be the icing on the cake for Chauncey Billups to get into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Now, we'll see as he's coaching Portland. Let's say he has a good run with Portland as head coach, not likely to win a championship, but develops into a really good head coach. That can help him get into the Hall of Fame because they weigh in all of that.
Right.
So I think with Chauncey Billups, that could have been enough, or maybe it will be enough to edge him over the top as the finals MVP. Kawhi's a Hall of Famer because he's got 2 of them. Tony Parker is a Hall of Famer. He's got an MVP and he's got 4 championships, so he's going to be in. So
we'll talk
yeah,
about rarefied air stuff like Sap. Like LeBron, obviously, every time he's won it, he's won MVP.
Right, he's got 4. Yeah, and
Jordan,
Michael has
every
6.
time he won and
Yep.
Finals MVP. So like when you're talking about becoming one of those elite level players
Right.
of all time, I do think it actually matters. So I agree with you with Chris Paul. I think his legacy is set if he wins this, no problem. I don't think he has to win Finals MVP. But I do feel like for Giannis, and it's tricky because of injury, if he comes back and wins it, I do think that really gives him a boost, not just winning the championship, but winning a Finals MVP. I really think that gives him an all-time boost.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, because what I think among many things that separate Jordan and LeBron from the rest of the great players, Bird won 3 championships, 2 Finals MVPs. One of them went to Cedric Maxwell.
Right.
Magic won 5 titles, 3 Finals MVPs. One went to Kareem, one went to Worthy. But LeBron won all 4 of his finals. He was the MVP in those 4 finals, and the same thing for Jordan's 6. So
yeah, they were pretty obvious choices, and
they were like there wasn't much. I mean, and again, Jordan never lost in the finals, and even in a couple of LeBron's finals losses, he was probably the best player on the court. Well, he is, but even his numbers were the best on the court. It's just Jerry West is the only guy that won a Finals MVP on a losing team. I don't think you really ever see that again unless somebody.
No, I don't think they'll ever.
Unless
do it
Kevin
again.
Durant shows up in the finals and averages 42 and loses in Game 7, and you may just say, Jesus, the guy carried the team that far. But yeah, no, this would be a big boost for Giannis because there's still a little pushback to Giannis, especially now after Milwaukee got to the finals by winning games 5 and 6 without him. Which I agree. I mean, it's foolish to say, oh, yeah, you know what? The Bucks are better without Giannis. Again, in the 2-game period, yeah, they got through it, but they're going to need him to beat Phoenix just for his rim protection. I mean, if he's not out there, the Suns are going to be able to get to the basket. DeAndre Ayton's going to probably have his way, and Booker likes to slash to the hoop, and even Chris Paul can finish at the rim. So they're going to need him out there. But yeah, if he gets a Finals MVP to go along with this, now you're talking about a guy with 2 league MVPs, a Finals MVP, and he's 26, 27 years old.
Yeah,
it's not like his
and
career's
title,
over.
I mean, that's a hell of
huge.
A resume at 26.
Yeah, he's exactly, starting to build. Okay, this guy's now, we'll put him in the top 30, top 35 players of all time, right? I mean, he'll start to make those lists, but you got to get that title to put you into that rarefied air. Look, when he retires, if he wins another MVP and ends up averaging, 25 and 11 for his career, then he's. But this could separate him from, say, Karl Malone, a player that
right. Well, let's call him power forward. Does he go ahead of Charles Barkley and Karl Malone if he wins a Finals and an MVP?
He could. MVP? I mean, I think it would take a few more years before we put him over there because he's only in his 8th year. Those guys played, especially Karl Malone, played damn near 20 years, and Charles played 15, 16 really good years. But yeah, no, he starts to get into that company. I've put Durant over those 2 guys, but Durant's more of a small forward. But if we're going to call Giannis a power forward, yeah, he could be right there with Barkley and Malone because they don't have titles. And he would have as many league MVPs as Karl Malone and more titles than those guys. So, yeah, you start to say, this guy's headed to surpass both of those 2 great players. Now, you have to also weigh into this that Malone and Barkley lost in their 3 finals to who? Michael Jordan.
Right.
Giannis, if he beats Chris Paul and Devin Booker, that's great. But it's not Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. So you kind of have to, there's a lot of context to all of these things, Jet. So I think it's interesting. And Giannis is just so young. He's still, got, I think, 5, 6, 7 more great years. I mean, I don't know how long he'll play. His game relies so much on athleticism that maybe when he's 33 and if he has a few injuries, he's not going to be the same player. But I still see another half a dozen years of being an elite player. If he can win this one title.
Maybe he becomes more of a post player later in his career. You know, I think that could be somewhat successful too.
Sure.
I mean, I think listen, we talk about Chris Paul's legacy is obviously first and foremost here.
Yep.
Because he's towards the tail end of his career. But this is a huge legacy thing for Giannis too, especially if he's able to play. No one's gonna give him any breaks for being injured. They're gonna expect him to win. So it's massively impactful for him. He's talking about Chris Paul is talking about that all-time point guard list, but Giannis is trying to really move up on that list of great players of all time. And we're talking about if we're looking just at that position of power forward, Right now he's looking to pass maybe like a Barkley and Malone, like I said. Maybe in his sights too is like a Garnett or a Dirk Nowitzki that he could, pass as a all-time great player potentially. I mean, it's on the table for him because he's so young.
Yeah, I mean, I still rank Garnett behind Malone and Barkley. I know he has the championship. I still think those two guys were better, but they're all close. It's not really a big difference among those three guys. Dirk, a little bit behind Garnett, even though he has a championship and an MVP. Yeah, those four players are pretty close. They're not quite close enough where I've got Elgin Baylor and Tim Duncan as the two
Right.
greatest power forwards ever. We're calling Larry Bird a small forward. I mean,
Yeah.
Larry Bird and LeBron to me are forwards. I mean, more than anything, they're basketball players. I mean, you can't call them just small forwards because they rebounded too well to be small forwards. You can't call them power forwards because power forwards don't pass that well or handle the ball that well. I mean, I call those guys Renaissance men.
Sure. Oh yeah. I mean, very unique.
Magic, LeBron, yeah, Michael, Kobe, Magic, Oscar. These guys are like whatever. Even Elgin Baylor. Elgin Baylor was 27, 13, and 5 in his career. How's that? That's pretty good.
Not bad.
I don't care what area you're playing in. But yeah, so this is a lot about legacy because I don't think next year the Suns and Bucks are going to be back here. Like I'm not making a real breakthrough announcement here, but you got to think in the East that if Brooklyn's healthy, they're the favorites, right? I mean, will Philadelphia ever figure this out? I don't know. See what they get for Ben Simmons if they in fact trade him. I don't think Atlanta could take a step back next year because this was a magical run. Will the Celtics figure out what the hell's going on? Miami, if they can go ahead and get Kawhi Leonard if he opts out, then they become a real factor in the East. And in the West, you got to believe the Lakers and Golden State will be better next year. Just adding Klay Thompson for Golden State with 2 high draft picks, and the Lakers always have a way of
what
figuring
Dallas
things
is
out.
Do with
right, exactly. Yeah,
let's say Kawhi Leonard goes there. They're obviously one of the favorites too. Yeah,
or even if the Clippers come back as is and add a couple pieces, they're right there. They could have very easily won this thing. I still think if Kawhi was healthy, they would have won the title. I still think that with those two guys and those role players their role players have all giant sets of balls on them. I mean, whether you like them, I mean, you love Patrick Beverly. I think he's a dirty player.
I didn't like that move at the end of the game.
That was stupid. But you know who was more to blame than anybody? What the hell was Frank Kaminsky doing? I mean, he's on the Phoenix Suns. He's a big stiff. He's standing right there. Like you see Patrick Beverly kind of charging at Chris Paul. Get in the way, protect the point guard.
Well, I think that's why he's a guy who's a journeyman in the NBA who doesn't play. He's not.
I would have cut him right
what's going on
after that game. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, oh, hey, how you doing? There's Patrick Beverly pushing Chris Paul from behind.
Sap, the happiest guy in the court was Chris Paul. I mean, he finally had broken through and gotten to Patrick Beverly, broke Patrick Beverly's brain, and he got ejected. He popped right up, put his hands up because he knew Beverly was going to be tossed from the game. So Chris Paul was thrilled. Believe me, that's exactly what he was looking for.
Yep, exactly. Got him out. But but I mean, Reggie Jackson made himself a lot of money in this postseason. Marcus Morris did a nice job. I mean, they've got and look, the coach is phenomenal. He may be the best coach in the business right now. But we'll see what happens in the offseason because who the hell knows what Kawhi's going to do? He could opt out.
Nobody does.
He could demand a try. Who knows with him? He could join the circus for all we know.
So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think either of these teams will be back here next year. So that just sort of stresses the importance of winning it. So, Sap, before we move on to our next topic, then let's just, call our shot. Who wins? How many games? Who's the MVP?
I think Phoenix will win in 7. And I think Devin Booker is going to have a monster series. I think, the nose should be, I wouldn't say 100% healed, but I think he'll be ready to go. I think he's going to have a monster series. I don't see Chris Middleton staying with him. And if they decide to put PJ Tucker on Devin Booker, that's going to be a massive mistake. You're going to see Drew Holiday on Chris Paul. That's going to be a really good matchup. So I'll go Phoenix in 7 with Devin Booker being the MVP.
Okay, I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to cheat and do the caveat of Giannis has to get in at least by game 3. If that's the case, I will take Milwaukee in 7 games, and I'll take Giannis as the MVP, more along the lines of the narrative that he came back and sort of saved the series, because I do think narrative is important when you're talking about finals MVP voting. Obviously, as you mentioned, the Iguodala finals MVP was pretty much all about narrative. It certainly wasn't about statistics. So that's my shot that I'm going to call right there is
Okay.
if Giannis returns by game 3. If he doesn't, if he doesn't play in the series, I'll take Phoenix in 5.
Think it'll be that quick. I think Milwaukee could still hang in there, maybe go 6 if he doesn't play. I think he's going to miss the first 2 games and then come back for game 3 and be at 80%, which he'll be enough to get this thing to game 7. But it's going to really impact him because he relies so heavily on athleticism.
Yep. All right. So we will obviously be here for all the finals games and give you a reaction for each game, and then our prediction for the next game. But there's still NBA news outside of the finals, so let's get to that before we finish up here, Sap. First, just a piece of news that we were fully expecting to happen. The Hawks made quick work to extend and change the title of their head coach, Nate McMillan. He gets a 4-year deal. The interim tag obviously is now released. He is the full-time head coach of the Hawks. I think we're on the same page here, Sap. This was obviously going to happen, and it makes the most sense.
Sensational job that Nate McMillan did. They were 14-20 when he took over, and from that point forward, they had one of the 3 best records in basketball. Beat the Knicks in the first round, beat the Sixers in the second round, and really availed themselves at the Eastern Conference Finals to the point when we were going into the final 3 games, knowing that Giannis was out. You kind of had a feeling Atlanta was going to somehow make it to the finals. They couldn't quite finish it. Trae Young got hurt in game 3, and just when he came back, he wasn't right. But Nate McMillan deserves all the credit in the world. And I think Atlanta can look to the offseason and look at a player like Cam Reddish, who I think played very well down the stretch, is potentially a good number 3 guy. I wouldn't say a number 2 guy, but a number 3 guy. If Atlanta, which you would think they can go out and maybe get some help in free agency, they could be back in this position next year with Trae Young and a real great number 2, and then the rest of those other pieces. Because I would think players want to play with Trae Young, right? I mean, he's a great passer.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to? So it's not like you're going to a place where I don't want to go play with that guy because he doesn't pass. This guy, I think, could lead the league in assists one year.
No, and
so I think that's
Atlanta,
a potential thing.
I think it's a fun place to live and play.
God, yeah.
So I think, they certainly could be a destination. And this obviously made a whole lot of sense to retain McMillan. Yes. I think the reason it took so long is because I think he was probably just focused on the task at hand and said, we'll just figure it out right when the season ends. And I mean, basically a day after the season ended for them, they figured it out. So not a surprise here, but I think a great fit for Atlanta. And I'm happy for Nate McMillan, who I think got fired unjustly in Indiana. And now he's in frankly, a much better situation because he's got, a much more dynamic star in Trae Young and a young team that has a lot of potential. And I agree with you with Cam Reddish. Remember, I mean, this guy was as hyped as anybody coming out of high school. Top recruit, goes to Duke, struggles a little bit, so he drops in the draft, doesn't have a good rookie year, and then really came on. I mean, I think he's 19, so
he's a baby,
makes sense you give him a little bit of time to develop. But he could be a big factor for this team. I mean, he's got the prototypical everything you'd want from an NBA player. He's got a nice shot. He's big, strong, athletic. So I agree with you, Sap. I think he could be a big factor for Atlanta.
Yeah, and if you see what you do with John Collins, you got Gallinari and Lou Williams are nice bench pieces, albeit they're pretty old. Capella does a nice job. So if you can get a free agent, man, I'm just thinking if Kawhi Leonard opts out and signs with Atlanta, they would become instant title contenders, maybe among the top 2 or 3 favorites. I mean, just picture Kawhi Leonard with Trae Young. That would be a interesting duo. But who the hell knows what Kawhi Leonard's going to do? Is he going to stay in LA? Is he going to opt out? That I think is the biggest question going forward in the offseason.
Yeah, that certainly is because no one can say which way he's leaning. It's impossible to tell. So I mean,
he's like when they elect a new pope, there'll be smoke signals come out of Kawhi's mansion.
We'll be on full-on Kawhi watch this offseason for sure. Sap, the last thing we want to talk about doesn't actually have to do with any NBA team in particular, but it is a massive story that is NBA adjacent. Over at ESPN, there's a ton of controversy there now surrounding Rachel Nichols, who is I'm sure everybody who listens to the show knows who she is. She's one of the most prominent figures on ESPN, especially when it comes to basketball. And she was recorded, I believe it was last summer, Sep, was it when she was
last
in the
year.
bubble?
In the bubble, just before they resumed play.
A phone conversation that, because of people didn't fully understand the Zoom technology at the time, whatever technology, she left the camera on. Someone was able to record her conversation unbeknownst to her. And she said basically she was upset about the promotion of Maria Taylor, another very prominent figure at ESPN, a black woman, to be essentially in charge of the NBA Finals coverage, which Rachel Nichols felt that she should have gotten herself. She said this: "I wish Maria Taylor all the success in the world. She covers football. She covers basketball. If you need to give her more things to do because you're feeling pressure about your crappy long-time record on diversity, which, by the way, I know personally from the female side of it, go for it. Just find it somewhere else. You're not going to find it from me or take my thing away." So now this isn't turned into a full-blown racial controversy at ESPN with a lot of people really calling for Rachel Nichols' head. Obviously being supportive of Maria Taylor, who deserves support. She didn't do anything wrong, but it's a complex situation, and I don't think it's fair to just outright say, "All right, Rachel Nichols, cancel, fired, goodbye forever."
Of course not. Yeah.
I don't think she said anything
No.
racist. I think it was
At all.
purely career motivated. And what she said is correct, in that ESPN does not have a great track record with diversity. And she was saying it privately. The insinuation that Maria Taylor got the job just because she's black obviously is bad. Like, Maria Taylor is deserving of all of her opportunities. She's very good at her job. But I'm not okay with saying Rachel Nichols is a piece of shit. She's a racist, all this and that. Kevin Durant obviously is getting involved in this and is gleeful.
Of course
saying,
he is.
That he hates Rachel Nichols and that, she's a big reason why people don't like him because she's part of narrative journalism. Well, you know what? That's her job, is to create narrative and storylines. That's her job. She's not a traditional CBS nightly news anchor where she's
not covering the
facts.
White House, right? Or the Pentagon. Yeah.
Right. She's not Walter Matthau.
No.
So that's silly that people are upset about her for creating narratives. That's her freaking job. Sap, I'm just kind of rambling here. So give me just your thoughts.
No,
on this
I think
story.
it's been blown completely out of proportion because Rachel Nichols said nothing racist. She was talking about ESPN having a terrible record when it comes to diversity, which it is. And all she's saying is, you want Maria Taylor. She does a lot of football. She covers college football extensively. Now you're giving her the job at the NBA at my expense. So it's not really helping any of us. She never mentioned race. She talked about diversity, and she had nice things to say about Maria Taylor to the point where, it didn't seem that bad to me, but apparently Maria Taylor hasn't responded to Rachel Nichols' olive branch, if that's the case, or the term that we want to use.
Listen, Sep, I'm not black, so I can't say how that feels, but it does seem like a little bit of posturing from Maria Taylor to garner more attention, more sympathy. Right. I'm not saying it in a negative way, but I'm saying that all the pressure is on Rachel Nichols. Maria Taylor doesn't have to do anything right now.
No, I mean,
she's going to look like a sympathetic figure. It's just bolstering her Q rating.
Here's the thing: is Maria Taylor still in contract negotiations with ESPN? Her contract ends right towards the end of the NBA Finals. I mean, it would not be that far-fetched if she doesn't sign an extension or a new contract that she may not be there for Game 7 of the NBA Finals. I mean, I think ESPN would try to avoid that embarrassment, but I know the salary demands are way off. She wants $5 million a year. They offered her like $1.5 million a year. Then she wanted as much as Stephen A. Smith. And look, Maria Taylor is very good, but ESPN's three highest profile positions are who? Stephen A. Smith, Mike Greenberg, and Scott Van Pelt. Those are the three biggest on ESPN. Now I get it. They're three guys, but Stephen A. Smith is black. Those are the three highest paid anchors, hosts, pundits,
people
whatever
tune
you
in to
want to
see
put
Stephen A. Smith, specifically him.
And Greenberg, I love on Get Up. I think he is the perfect host for that show. He gets in and out of segments perfectly. He's got all different types of experts on. He's very, very good at what he does. Everybody makes fun of him that he's doesn't have many opinions. Yeah, or he just doesn't have many opinions, or he's kind of a nerdy guy, but I think that's kind of sells pretty well. But Stephen A. Smith's the lead guy at ESPN, right? I mean, we all agree with that. When you think of ESPN, who's the first person you think of? Stephen A. Smith. And you,
high-profile sportscaster in the world right now, I'd say.
Absolutely, without question. And he's the highest paid, or one of the highest paid. Not as much as Tony Romo, who makes twice what he makes, which
that's insane.
Is a crime. But that's a whole other discussion for some other podcast we'll do. But yeah, so I mean, I wish that Rachel Nichols is sensational at what she does. She's close to many NBA players. Now, here's the thing. She's very close to LeBron James. In fact, the conversation she was having was with an advisor to LeBron James. So she was kind of confiding in him, and somehow it got recorded. And I guess a producer from Maria Taylor got it, and whatever, got it to the right people, or in this case, the wrong people. And that person has been let go or left. It's a very complicated story.
Why did it take a year, Sep, for this to come out?
It's exactly 1 year. Isn't that crazy? Like, I don't know if they held it.
Do you have any idea? I mean, that's what I was thinking about when I first read this. Why did this take a year?
Yeah.
Because there were much more opportune times in the heat of the BLM movement and stuff to drop this and really put the pressure on ESPN and Rachel Nichols. And I mean, I'm not saying like it's not good situation for either of them right now, but it does seem strange that it took a year, because I assume every New York Times, I think, broke this, right?
They did. Yeah. Yeah.
So did it take them a year with New York Times sitting on it? Did it take them a year to actually send it to the Times? I'm not sure why it happened now.
Did ESPN throw this out there because they're in these contentious negotiations with Maria Taylor? I mean, did they throw that out there?
Helps ESPN.
What would benefit? Yeah, what would benefit other than maybe ESPN's making the approach of, well, at least people are talking about us. Now maybe the lay fan might say, oh, I got to see who Maria Taylor is. I don't even know who she is. And they tune in to the NBA finals. I mean, we all kind of know who Rachel Nichols is, although we're both, sports fans and we do this for a living, and we're both NBA junkies. So of course we know who Rachel Nichols and Maria Taylor are. This isn't for us. This is maybe for the person out there that goes, wow, they've got some interesting things going on at ESPN. Let's check out this Maria Taylor. Is she as good as she's supposed to be? And it seems to be blown out of proportion, because I hate when someone who says something and then somehow it gets painted in a different vein, and all of a sudden Rachel Nichols is racist. Come on.
Especially dicey when it's a private conversation that was recorded unbeknownst to the person.
That's the problem. Yeah. I mean, Donald Sterling, say what you want. Fortunately, the league got rid of him quickly, but private conversations that are recorded in certain manners, there's some issues with that.
And obviously the content of this was nowhere near the content of Donald Sterling's thing.
She was just venting, and she said nothing racist. She basically she was actually shitting on ESPN more, saying, if this is their way to deal with their poor history of diversity, then why are you doing this? You're subbing one woman out for another woman. And I think they're both very good at what they do. These are not token broadcasters. They're both really good. Jimmy Pitaro, I believe, runs ESPN now. So maybe he's got to figure out a way to keep all people happy, because from what I understand is certain guests on certain shows aren't going on other shows, and there's all this infighting. This sounds more like you would find at like a radio station, right? I mean, you produced at EEI. Yeah. This was like a common occurrence at EEI.
No, I think that's why it's interesting for us to talk about it, Seth, because we do have some insight to this sort of stuff, because this does happen all the time in radio. It's the entertainment industry in general, specifically broadcasting, specifically sportscasting, incredibly competitive. And there's a lot of professional jealousy that goes on. You need to have it in order to, try to move up the ranks too. And Rachel Nichols is become a very prominent person, as is Maria Taylor. And you don't get to that point without, one, busting your ass, two, being really good at it, and three, having a healthy amount of professional jealousy.
Of course.
This isn't unusual. And so I would ask people who are really burying Rachel Nichols today. And again, I think it's different if you're black and you're saying, okay, well, you're just saying I'm getting this because I'm black. You feel differently about it. And I accept that. I think that's completely logical. But for someone who, like Rachel Nichols, who's expecting to have this high profile job, this high profile anchor of the NBA Finals, and for her to get the job taken away from her as she thought, or just given to somebody else. Do you think a natural human emotion is to just say, okay, like whatever?
Right.
No, it's
Yeah.
to be pissed off about it and to say, and to
Yep.
vent and to be angry about it. And, that's, I'm sure, how she's gotten to this point in her career and trying to figure out, why didn't I get this? I should have gotten this. Here's what I'm going to do going forward. So especially people who are like, we really need more female broadcasters, especially in the sports world, which I agree with. I mean, the amount of the male to female ratio is not good. But
Right.
wouldn't you want somebody to be upset about it and to not, obviously not to say the only reason she got this job is because she's black, but I don't think she directly said that, really.
She never said it. No, she was talking about diversity. So that could be painted as a woman. Like, Maria Taylor is a black woman. So, yeah, I mean, there was nothing racist in there. And if people are going to, Kevin Durant, it doesn't take much to set him off, obviously. And he probably, look, I mean, I think because in the NBA, right, this is Coke and Pepsi, right? You're a LeBron guy or a LeBron girl in this case, or a Durant guy or girl, right? I mean, you kind of pick one of the two. It's you really, especially what we all do. A lot of it seems like it feels like it's trumped up, especially like Skip Bayless is the best at this. Durant's better than LeBron, and then there's other people that LeBron's better than Durant. So you pick a side and then just die on that hill. So yeah, that's probably part of it as well. But Rachel Nichols is so well respected. She's fantastic at what she does. She got great access to a lot of the great players. Like, let's hope this doesn't lead to her being canceled.
I do wonder if, because she's so, successful, and I'm sure she's stepped on people to get to this point.
Sure.
It's possible she's not liked by her colleagues. And maybe that's part of this too. Because we see, I think you've been hearing a lot of people at ESPN are really pissed off about this. And so maybe they're just using this as an opportunity to say, we don't like her. She screwed us in the past. Some people there. She hasn't been nice to producers. I don't know this. I'm just speculating, and so it's getting blown up because of that. Maybe she's just not a very nice person professionally, and she's just been able to rise through the ranks because she stepped on people. That is not uncommon in the industry either. So it could be that to be playing a big role in it. I just don't know enough. There always seems to be controversy and stuff coming out of Bristol or LA, or wherever ESPN is located these days. It's just, you're dealing with a lot of personalities, a lot of people who that's their dream job. There's a lot of hyper competitive people there.
Yep.
That's how it goes in that workplace.
It's a massive operation. I think they have over 10,000 employees, if not more, worldwide. And yeah, it's very competitive. There's only one host of the NBA Finals. It's not like they're going to say, you know what, let's work this out and we'll have Maria Taylor do games 1, 3, 5, and 7. Rachel Nichols 2, 4, and 6. Because then Rachel Nichols would say, well, why can't I do games 1, 3, 5, and 7? Like it would just lead on to something else. It'd be like two great actresses or actors wanting top billing on the movie poster, right? So
right. No, you get it and you're there. There's no switching. It's not kindergarten where everybody gets a turn.
No, exactly. I mean, there's only one host of Monday Night Football, and now that ESPN has hockey, they're gonna have Sean McDonough be the lead play-by-play guy, which is a great choice because I think he could do any sport.
He can
at any level. I think he's as great as they come. It just didn't work with Gruden on Monday Night Football, which I think Gruden's probably a tough guy to deal with too, because he's a little bit off his rocker. But yeah, it's interesting. ESPN, I mean, again, they're getting a lot of publicity off of this. I don't know if it's good for morale at the network, because it seems like people are picking sides, right? Because
definitely,
it seems,
yes, picking sides.
Yeah, because you see even like Woj doesn't want to go on with Rachel Nichols now, and Jay Will and Jalen Rose were going to boycott. It was just sounded like, geez, this is chaotic. So Jimmy Patero, who runs the network, is going to have to figure this out. That's why they pay him the big bucks.
Any guess as to what you think is going to happen, Sap, if you had to make a prediction?
I think they both stay. I mean, there's enough
suspension
content.
Anything?
I hope not. I
don't think there should be.
No, there shouldn't be a suspension. I look, there's enough content for many people to make a lot of money there. I mean, the NBA is a huge property. So yeah, I think let's hope it just kind of blows over and Maria Taylor gets her contract and stays on because she's doing a good job. And Rachel Nichols is great on the jump. And, maybe we can all be happy for it.
If I'm Jimmy Patero, knowing that Maria Taylor so far has refused to talk to Rachel Nichols. I say you two have to go into a room together. Mediator, go in the room, period. We will not talk contract. We will not talk you being on the air, anything until you guys speak to each other. And then take it from there. Sit down in the meeting, take it from there, see what happens. But they need to talk. Period. Nothing can get resolved until they speak. And if it's Rachel Nichols is being insincere, then you find that out in a sit down meeting. If she's being sincere and Maria Taylor's being stubborn, you find that out in a meeting too. But they need to sit down in person together, and he needs to put that together. That's the first step in my mind.
Yeah, it's like when Paulie calls in Ray Liotta and Lorraine Bracco. You got to get along. Everything's going to be beautiful. We'll work it out. I mean, the mob boss can do that, but maybe Jimmy Pitaro is the guy that runs ESPN, so he should have the cachet to do that. Not as many people know about him as Stephen A. Smith, but he is Stephen A. Smith's boss. And in this case, he's, Maria Taylor and Rachel Nichols' boss as well. So I think it'll get resolved. Again, sometimes this works out because there's more people talking about ESPN right now going into a finals that, look, we're looking forward to this finals. I think the average sports fan who kind of dips in and out of it's like Phoenix, Milwaukee. What the hell's this? They're just assuming it was going to be Lakers and Brooklyn. And now you don't have those two mega star teams. You have different teams there. We're going to watch, but we'd watch if it was Atlanta against Denver, so it maybe gets more eyeballs onto ESPN in this finals.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if there's any fallout. We'll make sure to keep you all updated, but that's going to do it for us today. We are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out their website, fullpresscoverage.com, for this and other great podcasts and articles, especially with the finals going on right now. Stanley Cup finals might be coming to an end pretty soon, but that's going on. All-Star game in baseball coming right up. Shohei Ohtani did something that Babe Ruth never even did. So exciting time in sports. College players are getting paid. No reason to not go to fullpresscoverage.com and check out some good articles on all of that. And make sure you check out our Twitter accounts at JohnSap25. That's the number 2 and 5 at Jet Stryer. We'll give you all the latest show updates and opinions on everything going on in the sports world. And we will be back to react to game 1 of the NBA Finals. That is tomorrow at, I believe tip-off is at 9. So we'll be back on Wednesday, tell you everything that happened and what else is happening in the NBA world. Sap, I will see you on Wednesday. Take care, everybody.
Sounds good.